We uh got an unboxing tonight from HL Supply. So let's go for it. Why not? Gonna bring you up here on the other phone so I can see comments and whatnot in real time. And if anybody's email me, if anybody's interested in contacting me, they can email me about tools or whatever else. Okay. Pat's here. Good. Hey, Pat. Let's see what's on the agenda for the night. I guess if we can just get Squish on that 288, I think we're gonna be just fine. That's kind of what I think is going on. What else? Marshall's here. Mr. Wizard. Yeah. Not about Mr. Wizard, but try. You gotta try. That's the thing. Like, hey, Ken. Back's getting a bit good. Yeah, I don't know, like, about the Mr. Wizard thing, but you gotta try your level best, you know? Gotta try your level best. That's what it is. And there's a lot of guys that are not doing that. So, if I can be a little bit of, give somebody a little bit of ambition, you know, then it makes me happy. Get comments all the time about how somebody was able to fix something because they watched a video or something, which is awesome. I love that stuff. Absolutely love it. Meg is here. Howdy. So nothing too terribly exciting. Nikki showed up. There it is. Merry Christmas, Nikki. Nikki just got a really sweet care package, if I do say so myself. Yeah, Marshall, that's fine. Yeah, it looks big on camera, you know. Oh, there's my knife. Okay. Here's the main attraction. What's this? I think I got a 288 aftermarket muffler. Speaking of which, I gotta contact Red 97 for some more deflectors. I haven't done that. A 350 intake clamp setup, which always seem to need more of. I don't know why. A few more of those starter cover bolts for the 288 or 268 or any of those. These are non-retained bolts, so if they fall out, they fall out. If they get loose, they fall out. You know. Did you get it running, Megan? Wait a minute. Right. This is a 288 handlebar on the off chance that the other one that I have is not in great shape. It's probably not. These aftermarket handlebars are just fine. I really don't have a particular issue with them. Plenty stiff. Feels nice. So that's fine. That'll go in there. Okay. The other one that I have here is kind of a little bit buggered, so. All right. Those go in there. This goes. Ah, there we go. Sorry, guys. Well, yeah, sort of. I had an AC adapter, but the one that I have kind of sucks. So I put my spare battery on here, hoping it'll give us a couple minutes. So, I'll see what I can do. Don't know exactly how long that's going to last. And I don't know why they put the ring on here, but they do. That's kind of cruddy. I'm sorry, hang on. I don't know if you guys can see it. Can you guys see that? There's some marks in there. It looks like the, yeah. Looks like this was knocking. In shipping. Bump the plating. I can't see it. Hang on. There. Probably just run it. Won't affect anything. No, we're good here, Pat. It's not a high spot, it's a low spot, so it won't make any hoot of difference. Okay, so let's take the ring out of here. I love how you put scratches on things when you take the ring out. Stupid, but it's kind of reality. Okay. Huh. They put marks on the clip. Let's see. Purple marks on the clip. It's interesting. So that was installed at the factory. I'll just leave that there. Funny, just looking at this head, It's beautiful. I mean, just it's beautiful. The plating's gorgeous. But there, the bevel that they have in here is a little bit sharp. It instead of beveling, it bevels like straight instead of down. And there's basically no bevel on the transfers. I don't know. I hate working these over because it's so fresh, you know. I don't mind doing a head that's all messed up, and I can go in there and port it. But a brand new head, I don't know. It kind of bothers me. Do I have another piston? That's going to go out to the shop. This is a 660 piston. If we push this is 288. Push the ring down and look at how even the transfers are. I thought I hit the... Is that better, Mega? Try that. Pretty even. A little sloped towards the intake. Let's see. If I was going to port this, Nikki, on the lower transfers, I would make sure this is really well blended and that there's no lip, like right. I can catch that. So I would make sure that there's no lip there. I'd make sure this was all not kind of quite so pebbly looking in there. And you could certainly widen it a bit, especially back this way. I think you can grind it back a little bit there. But you do have to be careful not to grind through. If you that might be a little thin. Now, on the uppers, though, they're pretty even left to right. But you'll also notice that they're actually sloped towards the intake. Yeah, it's even. That's good. So I would probably not port this head just because it's so pretty. So this is an OEM 288 piston. And the windows are indeed pretty large, I'll tell you what. This is actually a 660 piston, so ignore that. Again, OEM ring, don't want to lose that. Let's check and see. With no gasket, do we have a head slapper? It's tight front to back because of the case gasket. which it runs into like right here. And this crankcase is actually slightly off top to bottom, so the squish is going to be at least a tad off anyway. You can see the rub here. Let's see if we can get this down anyway. Yep. So this case is going to have to be milled pretty much no matter what. Not a head slapper. Now we need some head bolts. Which I have tons of, just need to find. Yes, I get it. I got a fine giggle from here. I even sent it to my wife just to, well, anyway, so she could have just as much of a giggle. I don't know if she did or not, but I did send it to my wife. Yeah, the case halves are not quite lining up. A couple of head bolts. I'm not really that worried about the case halves not lining up because I can machine this crankcase. I just need to know how much I need to machine. And because if the crankcase is a little bit funky this way, it doesn't matter because we'll make sure that it's relatively flat this way, and the head can tilt that way and this way, no problem. It's whether or not the head tilts this way or this way, that's bad. So this is going on the Bridgeport. I just don't know when. And you don't really want to crank this down like crazy because if something's off, you can crack an ear. Pyro! Yeah, I wanted to, let you know that a lot of the questions are really hard to answer. They're hard for me to answer on YouTube, and the better place would be to go to the online forums and have that type of stuff answered. But welcome to the live stream, just the same. So here, let's get Squish. Hey, Jonathan. Now, it's going to be a few thousands off anyway, but, it's just, isn't it there? About 25,000. Yeah, speaking of care packages, Jonathan's getting one in a hurry here. Might be there tomorrow. Hopefully be there tomorrow. So right now that says 25. let's use my bigger stuff here to confirm or deny that. Now this is 60,000 solder. And that's saying 27,000. So well, if we use a base gasket, which is about 20 thousandths for these, which I guess it would make sense to measure, but let's do that. You're on the mend. Good. Any special build for the get-together? Not really. I think the 372 I built the other day is going to be enough, but we still have not had the Mason report yet. I did hear from him. He's been busy. So here's the gasket. It's right on about 20 thousandths. So assuming we want to use a gasket, the squish is about 25 right now. Again, some high points. So on this saw, I think if I take off, I think if I take off 25, it might be a tad much because of the inconsistency. So if I take off 20, I think we'll get it pretty darn good here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write on the case what I want to take off. Minus 0.020 goes right on the case. So even if I end up with a squish of like 25 thousandths, that's fine. There'd be plenty of compression there. Now I can just take this back off. And these are 3/16 head quarter 20s. Hey, Craig. Welcome. What will happen to the soft build? I don't know. If somebody wants it, they can buy it. $288. Yep. I think I'll run this just like it is. Don't have nothing to go, don't want to go completely crazy. Yeah, that'll be fine. Now that I have my measurement, actually what we'll do is we'll take a little bit closer look as to what's going on here with the case half mismatch. They gave me an extra clip. I mean, that's generous. Nice. Okay. Yeah, this is a genuine OEM head. So not cheap. And a pin bearing. So, well, that's what I forgot to go get out in the shed. It was a clutch drum. Doesn't matter. So yeah, so if you take, yep, probably Mile Jug. Nope, this is a KS. Sorry. Yep, KS. Schmidt. So you can just take a straight edge and line it up on the case. And if there's a rock in the center, you know you've got a high point here and a high point here. So low points there and low points there and high points here. So the case halves are slightly cocked this way. For what I'm doing, that's not going to matter because relatively they're still straight across. They're front to back tilted, maybe. Hey, Tinman. Yeah, KS is Schmidt. And I don't know how much more battery we're going to get. Probably not much. Let me go see if I have the charger. Hang on. In time. Hopefully that was in time. Okay. We'll put this onto charging, and we will be off and running here. Good, that's charging. Okay, now we're good. Tools are to be deburred, shine the sleeves, Scotch-Brite. Good. Yeah, they needed that, Nikki. Good, thanks for doing that. I had to get the whole thing out to you just as soon as possible, you know? Just threw everything in the box. Anyway, so the key here is to make sure that the head doesn't tilt this way. If the head tilts a little bit this way, it's not that big of a deal. But if you cant it this direction, that's no good. So what I can do is, since I have a squish of 25, and that's probably technically off the high points. I don't know what the low points would be, but if I take 20 thousandths off, let's say, indicate it to here, you'll have a pretty good average. But from here to here, we have a rock. From, let's say here. So here to here are two different heights, but from here to here is flat, and from here to here is flat, although relative to each other, they're both in the same plane. So as long as they're in the same plane, and I can prove that, then this will be completely flat this direction. So, you guys see what I mean? So that's why you can go and machine the case and make sure it is darn flat. And I don't know when I'm going to do that, but that'll be a job. Apparently, my father-in-law did indeed send the 394 on its way. Not going to be here for a bit, but that's okay. If we get screwed. How do I answer that question? No. Is that okay, guys? Fine? Okay. What else am I doing tonight? I think that was really it that I wanted to do. Now I have my measurement. Now just kind of everything will tend to fall into place once I get that machined. I have no idea when that'll actually happen. Whatever. But I do have this nifty difty high top. That's going to go on there. I have that brand new OEM starter that's going to go on here. The fuel tank isn't in too bad a shape. So this should make for a pretty nice saw. Pull the crank and use a bar through the bearings. You know, I've thought about doing that. But here's the thing. This is all sealed up. And so what you'd have to do is you'd have to install the bearings, put the cases together temporarily, put the bar through, indicate it for flat, but then how are you going to get squish? So you're talking about assembling and disassembling and assembling and disassembling multiple times. I guess you could do it with a kind of a cruddy set of bearings. You don't want to do that with a new set of bearings to assemble and disassemble all the same. You know, not me. And it's a heck of a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Make a solid piece to simulate the bearings. I guess so. Did anyone see Farmer Tech video of the 395 3120? No, I missed that. I had a feeling it was coming, but I don't know. I didn't know when. Yeah, they have full saws on those coming. I know that. I don't know if it'll be kit saw. It might be kits. It might be full saws. They might start with kit saws like they've done and then do full. But I'm pretty sure those are on their way fast and furious. Yeah, the 395 is going to sell like mad for sure. I think the easy thing to do would be get kind of a washed up set of bearings, install them, put the crank in, pull it all together, maybe with a gasket, but without any goop or anything like that. So pull it all together, get a squish number, pull it back apart, back together with the bar instead of the crank, indicate both sides, indicate the top. It's a lot of work. But then all you're doing is checking for, you're checking whether or not this surface here, you check whether this surface here is flat relative to that surface there, what would be the bar sticking out. And ultimately, is that an exercise in academia or is that actually useful information? If it's out, what are you realistically going to do? Yeah, let's say it's out. What are you going to do? You going to throw out the case? Would you propose actually canting this far enough to then machine this parallel to the crank? It's hard to do. That's it really implies that Husky was really that far off to begin with, which I have a hard time believing. Tell you what, Ken, you're now the pioneer. You go for it. I just, I'm telling you, like, just getting this aligned on the Bridgeport to do this anyway usually takes me half an hour to an hour just to get it set up to make the cut. It really is an extensive process to get it just right. And that's assuming that we're fairly flat here. I know we can take the assumption out, but it's a significant amount more work. Will it kill the saw? It will. That's the thing. It certainly would kill the saw, Nicky. If it's as far out, um, yeah. If it's 10 thousandths out from here to here, this direction, yeah, it'll eat up the crank. But it should be pretty good from the factory. If they're not that good from the factory, there's another problem, you know. The gains probably weren't. I would say that there's essentially no gains, except there's no gains that there. You're just mitigating risk. Looking through my worksheet for something. What do I see? Not one, two, three Echo 302s. Okay, I'm not familiar. Put those parts over there. Don't need this anymore. I guess I can clean all this stuff up anyway. Just don't need it right now. How much material do you have to be able to machine safely? Um, oh, Pat, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. Ooh, that's a good idea. It wouldn't work because there's too much play. I think there's too much play this way. I love the idea though. Need threads for cylinder attachment. Give it a quick test. All right. Um, to go back to Tim's question, I will how much have I machined off before? I think I machined off like a quarter of an inch to make a saw uh, a 360 to 440 hybrid. I machined off, I think a quarter inch was possibly about the limit of what was realistic. On a saw like this, possibly an eighth of an inch would be possibly realistic. So let's see, how much play is there? I think there's quite a bit, probably, but I could be wrong. Yeah, there are issues for sure when you do that sort of thing. Oh, that's the wrong one. Why doesn't that go? It's not that. I doubt the crank is machined to that high of a tolerance. But again, Jonathan, what you could do on there is take the crank and initially put it on the lathe, put it in a collet, indicate the other end of the crank, make sure it's true, and take an extremely light cut on the crank lobes, and then indicate to that. That's an idea. See, this wobbles this way. Hey, Steve. Actually, the crank lobe idea is probably the most realistic one. Could you make a rod for the connecting rod small end? Yeah, you could, but it's the wobbles in the lower bearing, in the big bearing. If we stabilize that, there's still wobble in the piston, a little bit, not much. See, there's no up and down play. That would be bad, but there's some side to side play. And so if you have side to side play, you're definitely going to be not flat here. I like the idea of the crank lobes though. That does sound at least interesting. Thinking how could I actually make that happen? Oh god, I'm tired. Oh shoot, sorry. Thinking what crankcase I could actually use to do that. Maybe see the 394 case that I have coming. I don't even know from my father-in-law. I don't even know that I machined that. I might have machined that, in which case the Eric Copsey top end is not going to be best for that set of cases, which means I need another set of 394 cases. Well, Ken, what you would do is you would put one end in the collet and then put the other end probably in the live center, but make sure the other end of the crank is indicated so the both sides of the crank are running true. And if that's running true, now you just take a light cut on the lobes, and now that will be true to the crank. Once it goes in, then all you got to do is move this, move the crank lobes up. Now you indicate off that. Could do that. Indicate off the crank lobes, and then, yeah, I like the idea. Indicate off the bearing pockets without the crank in the case. Complex, Tim. You'd have to have an indicator that would get in there on one side and indicate, and then flip it around somehow without altering it. So it would have to be held in the chuck, and then you'd turn it this way and indicate it again on that side. It would have to be not a straight up and down indicator, but one of the ball indicators. I think it's easier for to do the lobes. The crank is hardened. I think so. Yeah, pretty hard. Yeah, put it in the collet on one side, put a live center on the other, indicate the other end of the crank, make sure it's true. Light cut on the lobes, you got it. Yeah, the weights aren't. No. I think a machine no problem. The one monkey wrench there is the connecting rod's going to be flying around while you're doing that. So how would you keep the connecting rod out of the way? You couldn't take one single cut. You'd have to cut it. Get the bungee cord. No, because even if the lobes, even if the connecting rod is shortest, it's still sticking out from the lobes. So you can't take a single pass. Can't do that. You can make a cut and then go around and make another cut, assuming your lathe is accurate to the same depth. Yeah, actually, Ken, there's another. Uh, we think we put it on the lathe. How about just putting it on the Bridgeport? Take the crank, hold it in a collet on the Bridgeport, indicate both sides of the crank, and then make a flat on the top of the counterweights. And that way, the connecting, nothing's spinning. The crank's not spinning. The crank is flat. The crank is not moving, and you put the connecting rod down or whatever and hold it somehow. It would be a little more inventive to hold it that way. Well, Craig, no matter where the connecting rod is held, the connecting rod is going to be a bigger diameter than the weights. Whether you hold it out that way or whether you hold it in tight, still doesn't matter. Even if you hold it, it's still going to be spinning, which means you cannot make a single cut. So if you have the right setup on the Bridgeport to hold the crank, indicate it, and then put just a little flat on the top of the counterweights, and you'd be good. That's an interesting idea too. See, if you had a set of junk bearings in there, right, right, even if you, that way the rod is held in a fixed position, and it can be fixed downward. It just can flop there if you want, but you have to hold the crank like in some type of a collet and make sure the whole thing is indicated this way. Then you have it. The crank has centers on each side. Put the case in bench centers. Never thought of that, Pat. Also an interesting idea. So if you can, yeah, you have a hole here and a hole here. So if you have the right centers on the Bridgeport, I don't. I usually clamp the case and have to maneuver it and clamp it and maneuver it and clamp it. But what Pat's mentioning is go from either side with bench centers. You'd have to indicate the bench centers and make sure they're correct. Then all you have to do is worry about the whole thing tilting this way, and you could probably shim it one way or another so that it's tight. That could work. I like it. So you'd hold it, if you had the appropriate bench centers, you'd hold it tight this way, and then so it would not rock this way. Then you just have to worry about this, and you could use like a couple pieces of cedar shingle on the bottom to tap it in so then it won't shift, and then you make your cut. How's that for an interesting discussion? Very cool, guys. That's very interesting. All kinds of different ways to machine stuff that you just never think of. Right, you use timber wedges just to be like that. Yeah. Okay. I'm tired. I don't mind hanging out, but I really need to hit the hay. So, um, this is cool. This is a really cool and interesting discussion. I'll tell you what. Probably one of the most interesting I've had here. All kinds of different ideas on how to do the same thing. Um, and it might be true that the any gains or mitigation of risk here is probably not worth the effort, but still an interesting discussion, you know? So I appreciate that. It's cool. Go mow lawns, Mega. Nikki, thanks for hanging out. Do appreciate it. Is it 288 a short stroke? I would consider it a long stroke. I think the 660 has a slightly longer stroke, but I think it's a long stroke motor. And it's the same crank as in a 394, but a 54 millimeter piston. The 394 has a 56 millimeter piston. So I love the discussion. Very cool. I'm going to call it a night. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. I do appreciate it. Everybody take care. Be safe. Nikki, enjoy your package. And to Jonathan, when you get your package, I hope you enjoy your package too. Craig, thanks for coming by. Mega, Tim, Ken, Nikki, everybody, thanks for coming by. To those people that haven't posted yet, thank you for hanging out and lurking. And thank you to Ken and James for doing some moderating. I didn't see James tonight, but I'm sure we'll see him soon. Okay, everybody have a great night. Thanks, guys. Take care, Jonathan. Monitor that tracking number. Later. Bye.